and welcome once again to this week's Renewable Roundup podcast from Schneider Electric. I'm Russell Redding, Head of Energy Markets at Zygo. In the next few weeks, I've got some more great stories, and topics, insights, and some really good experts. So please do hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a thing. This week, I'm pleased to say I'm joined by Stefano Dessi of Uniper, and he's going to talk all about Italy. Italy is a rapidly evolving market, and I think this discussion is going to be really illuminating. So, do you want to hear about Italy from someone at the sharp end of the market? If so, listen on. Stefano, hello, and thank you so much for joining me this week. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you, Russell? How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. I think we're into summer now, maybe. So that's got to be a good thing, right?
Yeah, it is. It definitely is.
Excellent. Stefano, would you care, for the listeners at home, just like to introduce yourself, tell us who you are, what you do?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So my name is Stefano Dessi, and I work as an Offtake Manager at Uniper Renewables. And I do manage the offtake activities for Italy and France. And these are two of the countries that Uniper Renewables work in. So we got people doing offtake management activities for Germany, for Poland, Hungary, Sweden. So we covered these countries with all the activities tied to renewable assets. And I started working in January this year, so I'm kind of fresh in the company. And I have a background based on, well, I've worked in energy my entire career, efficiency, procurement of energy, certification, sustainability as well. So yeah, that's the full background related to energy that I brought into this new exciting experience at Uniper Renewables.
Excellent. Thank you, Stefano. I'm really excited to have you here because I want to ask you some questions about Italy, and I know you're an expert. But B, because of that width of and breadth of experience, I think it's going to be great to kind of get your perspective on things. So, a massive thanks for joining today. So, do you want to give me a bit of a view, if you don't mind, about Italy? Where are we with the kind of renewable energy market in Italy?
Sure. So, well, the situation is pretty much contained in the latest report from Terna, which is the national grid operator, that has certified that in 25 renewables installed capacity has increased, and has increased not exactly at the same rate as 24. So we had a bit of a physiological slowdown and installation of pretty much every technology out there. But the production of renewable energy has kept on increasing so far. And in 25, the generation from PV, from photovoltaic technology, has surpassed hydro, which was the king of renewable generation in Italy. So it is a sector where installations keeps going on. PV photovoltaic is still the king with regards to new installations, new investments. So why is that? Because wind technology, the onshore installations are still suffering from a lot of bureaucratic problems. So with regards to getting the secondary permitting, the primary permitting, and we got a lot to deal with as developers with regards to installing new wind capacity. So we're kind of waiting for development for offshore, but that is because sea in Italy is not like the North Sea, is not like UK, is not like north of Germany. So they have a very flat surface, and the depth of seas does not go that much. So in here, we need to develop a step further with regards to installing offshore capacity. What has increased is the installation of BESS, so battery systems that are, I think they will be installed even more with a new mechanism that is going to be announced in Italy, which is the FER Z, um, which we will discuss later. But so far, so the market is still going up, is still going strong. There's still a lot of room. There's still a lot of improvements that can be done when working with renewables technologies in Italy. And that is what I'm doing daily, on a daily basis, basically. So I keep track of all the projects in Uniper Renewables pipeline with regards to authorizations, bureaucratic activities, as well as keeping track of the pure offtake activity, which is basically where do we get the revenues from? How can we secure the revenue stream? Because we're talking about long-term investments here. We're talking about plants that have a lifetime of 35 years. So we need to be really certain in how to ensure the stream of revenues is able to provide a solid foundation for backing up the investment, because otherwise it's just wasted money. And the situation so far in Italy is that we have some schemes that can be used, CFD schemes like the rest of Europe, merchant PPAs, corporate PPAs, new schemes that were just created a couple of years ago, such as the Energy Release 2.0, which is a CFD. I'm not going to be a lot of technical about it, but it's a CFD scheme that was created to support the energy-intensive companies and had a lot of success. So it went good. And there are new schemes being developed. So we do see that there's a lot going on with regards to regulatory help for creating, let's say, a steep increase of renewable capacity to be installed. That is why Uniper Renewables chose Italy as a market to develop, as a market to invest for such kind of activities.
That Stefano, that was going to be my next question. Actually,
yeah,
was
sure.
Given where you you've obviously given a great comparison 24 and 25, how do you see the future? I mean, what I was hearing, I think, was, there's been a lot of regulatory change. There have been some things, for example, there are issues with offshore, which I get, onshore wind, batteries are increasing, solar's increasing. But then I'm hearing, like, actually there's a lot of positivity about potential regulation and CFDs. So do you think it's a good outlook, say, for 26 forward?
It is potentially a good outlook because we're going to have two kind of CFDs. So the first one is the evolution of the FER AX, which is a CFD. It's a regular CFD, no big changes, but it's going to be like recreated, and it's going to last for 3 more allocation rounds, one end of 26 and 2 more in 27. They were already confirmed. So, and what we've seen is that the FER AX had a huge increase of participation compared to the previous FER 1 scheme that was not really capable in attractive in attract investments and development. So the participation rate was like 20 to 30% in that scheme. It was not absolutely good. So they changed the approach, and the FER AX, well, the saturation has been like 70 to 80%. So huge increase. And now we're going to reach the maturity of that scheme when it's issued. So it's going to kick in additional capacity to be installed. But what we also see is the willingness to create a new scheme, which is going to be the FER Z, where the framework is going to be radically changed. It's not going to be, I'm going to support you to simply inject renewable electricity into the grid. That was the FER X. No, what they say is, I'm going to support you if you inject a proper baseline, a specific profile into the grid. Because that helps with regards to cannibalization, because that helps with regards to developing new technologies. So it's not what do you put into the grid, it's the shape of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be notified. There's going to be a lot of work with it. We've just seen the results of the public consultation that the energy minister provided for this particular scheme. And we don't see the first auction coming up sooner than 28. So we still got like 1 year and a half, 2 years to prepare for that. But when it goes live, that's going to change radically the way we plan investments with regards to renewables, because we're going to be treated not with regards to the quantity, but with regards to the quality, the timing, the profile of energy. So it's going to be, I think, that's my personal belief, it's going to be really helpful for BESS system, for battery systems. Not just generating, injecting into the grid and let the grid distribution, the grid system take care of it, because that creates a lot of problems, lots of problems. We already know that Terna, the national grid operator, is going to invest 11 billions of euros in creating 5 streamlines from north to south in order to connect areas of Italy, because we have a misplacement right now. It's like physiological, like we have most of the installation south, but then most of the consumption and the demand goes up in the north. So there's a need of physical transmission of electricity, and there's a need to help that transmission in giving the operators a request to inject energy over a specific profile. That is going to be, again, that's my personal belief, that's going to be groundbreaking with regards to the renewables investment and planning in Italy.
That's really interesting, actually, because again, to echo that, I think my belief would be that is, should we say, the regulator, and presumably working with the grid, saying, I want to get the renewables right for the grid. So yes, to investment, the north-south thing. We in the UK, we've got it in reverse. We've got all that wind in Scotland, northern demand in the south.
North, it's the other way around.
Completely know what you mean. Yeah, totally. Yeah. But I think I personally would rather see, the grid operators and the regulators, and government saying to a degree, look, we do need to address how we put energy into the grid, rather than what I think I'm seeing with things like the GHG, who are saying, well, you need to match customers, you need to match, because I think that puts the wrong thing in the wrong place almost. It potentially creates demand, but that's actually it's actually really interesting, because I think that feels like a first, and I think the FER Z will be really interesting to watch. It did lead me to another question around firsts, and I have to say, I if you don't want to or can't answer this, I'm going to ask it. But on zonal pricing, there was a big debate in the UK about zonal pricing. It got very divisive, and we dropped it. Obviously, Italy has got zonal pricing.
Yeah, we do.
If you feel comfortable to, what do you think it's been or will be a positive or a negative? Does it not massively made a difference? Have you a view on that?
Well, so far, what we do see right now is that we have 6 market zones in Italy.
Yeah.
The north one, it's still the one leading the price. So we still retain what was called PUN, which was the Unified National Price, which is still being calculated. and we do see that North matches this PUN really good. There's a really good fitting, right? Because that's where most of the demand is. But yes, I do believe that regional pricing is still necessary in order to offset these differences with regards to where do we install capacity and where do we need actual consumption. And because of that mismatch, those differences needs to be paid, right? So we need to have an actual difference in terms of prices between areas, because otherwise there would be no need for creating, as I said, 11 billion of investments over these streams, right? You do that also because of the safety of your grid, but also because we're trying to even those differences that still needs to be in place. They still need to be. So I was a bit skeptical at first because I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. People will always keep using the PUN, right? And in fact, when we do speak with final consumers, companies, they still think about the PUN. They don't think about, oh, my production site in the north, and then I have another one in the center of Italy, and they pay differently. No. They want the same price. So that's why they still index to PUN. But as operators on the market, we do see that those differences are needed.
Interesting. That's really interesting. I mean, we, like you, we see a lot of the offers in Italy go through a proven at PUN.
Yeah.
Probably about half of them are still made. And we do see people make offers that say, well, we'll offer a PUN, but we'll offer a zonal price, whatever. So it's really interesting to hear.
That's what we do. That's what we do. When we're supposed to quote a PPA for a final consumer, we always give the option of PUN rather than the market pricing where the asset is located. Because I know that, I mean, companies have been used to PUN for like 50 years or something. So they will not switch thinking to regional pricing that much soon. So it's going to take a while before this difference gets to the end.
It gets really embedded and corporates change. That's interesting.
That's right. And one other thing that I wanted to add, that profile thing that the GSC is willing to get, it's also because the GSC wants to act as a third party with regards to matching developers with corporates in order to facilitate and ensure the creation of corporate PPAs, especially for SMEs sized companies, right? And then again, if the GSC needs to have energy to be given out to companies as PPAs, as corporate PPAs, if they're already profiled, it's easier to do. It's easier to match the actual needs of any corporate, any industrial activity, any premises in Italy. That's the other reason for it. So it's not just the GSC needs to have renewable energy, but they need to have it in specific timing, specific areas. Yes, that's a change of quality in what they need.
That's interesting. That's really, really interesting. Thank you, Stefano. So we've talked quite a lot about Italy. Obviously, I know that your Uniper are present, all over in Germany, Poland, Hungary, the UK, Sweden, France, Italy. But talking about Italy, what are you up to in Italy?
Well, basically, right now we are working on a pipeline that's going to be energized in 28. So far, and that's a very interesting question because it gives me the possibility to add a few more insights with regards to the strategy that we have. So the majority of that pipeline has been secured through FER AX. Okay, so that scheme that I was talking about, we know it because we've been using it. Okay, but we do retain a quote that's not covered by FER AX, and my job is to advise on what to do with it, because we have several opportunities. We could go merchant in different sizes. We could go with a PPA, with a corporate PPA, or we could sell it as a PPA to other utilities. We don't have preclusions to work with anyone in Italy. We're not just focused to industrial counterparty. We're not just focused in working with the government only or working with utilities only. And I think it's a wise choice to take right now, because as I said, CFD schemes, they are helping a lot with regards to installing new capacity, but they're coming to an end of it, right? So the FER X is coming to the end of it. And then it's going to be the FER Z, which is more complicated, more rewarding. I think I can safely say that it's going to be more rewarding, but it's going to request a lot more than just thinking where to put my windmills or my panels, you know? Mm-hmm. And on the other hand, there's a hunger of volumes coming from all industrial counterparties. So, as I said, we don't make preclusions. So, after we have secured what I could say 60 to 70% of our revenues, but it's probably a bit more than that from the FER X, we want to keep the freedom to use the remaining one to achieve any potential up gains, whether coming from merchant, utilities, whatever, you name it, I don't care, right? Because of this hunger of volumes. And I think that is my interpretation of it, but it's a wise choice to go like 60-40, 70-30, not just putting all your eggs in a single basket, right? As the FER X, it worked out tremendously well for all the developers involved, okay? And as I said, it helped tremendously increasing the rate of installation. But we cannot, I believe, as developers, rely exclusively on that. And that is the same thing we're doing in every country. It's not just specific to Italy. That's the same thing we've been doing in the UK, right? So AR6, AR7, we've done a lot with them. We've recently started to energize a site in the UK that went with the AR6, I believe. But we are already investing and investigating the installation of BESS in the UK, as well as going for corporate PPAs in countries such as Germany, that they do have their own CFD scheme, or Hungary, or Poland, or Italy as well. CFD schemes, as I said, they have helped in every country. But now it's the time to, let's say, start looking for additional opportunities that might be even better with regards to securitization of revenues, as well as the quantity of revenues, ancillary services, not just generation. Generation was the first step, but then it's all about the additional services.
That's really interesting, and you know what, it makes a lot of sense strategically, and I think as time has progressed, and I, like you, have spent many years in the industry, and remember a long time ago when obviously strategy on both generation and procurement side was quite simple, and you see how it's become more and more complex over time. But what was interesting was to hear your sort of you phrase out that hunger for volumes. So it sounds to me like corporates are keen on PPAs still.
They are.
So that's good, which is good news for everybody. Do you have a view about what corporates are looking for? Because obviously there's lots going on at the moment,
Well,
energy prices, GHG. Do they even know? Do they want the impossible, or actually is it just a case of them finding what they need?
well, what I could say is, it all started with energy-intensive companies, right? So they were the ones that went ahead in the market, went looking for those specific contracts. Then it went down, still in the heavy industry, but perhaps not related to concrete, glasses, tires, everything that really needs a lot of energy, and it needs a lot of steady energy. You cannot just turn off the ovens or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And now, what I can see from my perspective, I've been invited. It's been 6 months into Uniper Italy, and I've been invited to quote corporate PPAs already like once per month, probably. And the kind of companies that request such quotings come from all production activities, like chemicals, yes, but textiles, food, uh, services as well, if they are big to have like big volumes to put on the platter. And they have started to rely a lot in using companies that put their name as advisors with regards to that are able to gather volumes from different companies, from different countries as well, and create like virtual PPAs. PPAs that can be assembled using assets from all European countries and then be sold to any other company within Europe. That's massive, because it all started out with companies that were like, can you put some panels on the roof or on that field that's just across the road for me, lay down a cable. It's a non-site PPA. Then it goes to off-site PPAs still within the country. And then using virtual PPAs, we can quote and provide PPAs from virtually anywhere in the countries where we operate. And this hunger, as I said, comes from every production sector. Like I don't see a recurrent need for any specific sector, because as I said, some sectors have already provided in the past. They're already covered because they were able to foresee what was going to happen with regards to the energy market. They were already able to secure themselves a position. But now, all these companies, even companies they thought were not big enough to need a PPA, or our consumption, our activity does not belong to a PPA, they do now see that can be done, that can be tailor made to them. Even changing how it works, like all PPAs were created as fixed for floating, right? Fixed price. 10 years, fixed price. Easiest energy budget ever.
Yeah.
But it puts a lot of hurdle on the developers' shoulders. And this hurdle increased even more right now in Italy. We have had huge spikes of volatility because of the Strait of Hormuz closure, but right before that, Italy issued an energy decree that was aimed to reduce prices because it wanted to, and it's currently being discussed in the European Commission, they wanted to take out the ETS weight on the price creation.
Mm-hmm.
So that was aimed in bringing down the price, and it lasted for 4 to 5 days. We were seeing curves going down and down every day, and then the Hormuz Strait was closed, and the curves
Went up
yeah,
again. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So huge volatility. So fixed for floating, still a lot of requests, but we also have market following requests, which is totally different, where the company, the industrial customer tells you, okay, I do understand that you are not able to provide me a fixed price for 10 years. And this takes a lot of understanding with regards to energy market. But if they are able to understand that, they'll be like, okay, I understand you cannot. That's cool. But can you give me a fixed discount over the market price for 10 years? And we can put a floor price as well to help us, again, understanding how to give out this discount, understanding how the other rate is going to be. But again, this changes a lot because now we do have several opportunities in order to create something that an industrial customer might be willing to purchase, might be able to understand and budget within their energy costs.
Interesting. It's interesting. In terms of the PPAs, I always visualize it, or I visualize it like a triangle. So as you said, at the top of that triangle, you've got those energy intensive users, the big corporates, who, as you said, if they can, they have. And then as you come down that triangle, there are more of them in width, so there are more companies. They're a bit smaller in size, and that's why you're seeing things like the cohort PPAs where they're coming together as a group, and things like that. And I think it's been it's an interesting dynamic because I've tried to do work about think for example in the UK is what could the UK do to get that next sort of tier of customers comfortably participating in PPAs, so they're no longer just taking an energy price off the grid or whatever, but they're able to say, I've got some control, whether it's a fixed price or, as you say, well, we can take a market following price. So if the market falls, we get a benefit. If it rises, we're protected to a degree. And it's really interesting to see how the market's evolving from just those kind of, like you say, if you think back, you're right. A start from on-site, then off-site, pan-European, and then it's kind of changing. We're seeing interest in on-site again, cohorts, battery PPAs, talking about shaping, all those things. It's really interesting. Conscious I've taken up a fair bit of your time, Stefano. Before we wrap up, any last thoughts, any last things to kind of throw out there, I guess?
Not that I mean, I think we've pretty much mentioned everything that's stirring around in Italy so far. And I think there's going to be a lot more to talk end of 26 because we will have the new FER AX scheme. We'll probably, hopefully, have a lot more information with regards to the FER Z. Because as I said, I don't think it's coming live sooner than 28, but end of 26 might be a good timing to start pouring out some additional information and insights of what's going to be so that we as developers can start thinking about perhaps reshaping some of the projects that are sitting in our pipeline so that they could match this new scheme and hopefully be able and eligible to bid in the first auction. So yeah, as I said, I think that it's going to increase even more the attention. It's going to increase the focus of investors and developers on the opportunities that currently sit in the Italian market. It's going to be seen, I think, in the next 4 to 5 months of what's really going to happen. And what happens, it's going to really shape the future of renewables installation in Italy for the next, I could say, 2 to 5 years, definitely.
Really interesting. If I would love you to come back and maybe we have another talk at the end of this year or early next year about all those things. I'd love that.
I'd be delighted to do that.
That's excellent. I would say I do think you're right. I think the Italian market has evolved very quickly from my perspective. I think many people have looked at things like Spain and said, oh, there's a market leader. There's lots of solar and things like that.
That's true.
I know that my colleague Mark will be listening to this podcast and laughing to himself because he's been saying for a number of years, keep an eye on Italy, watch Italy to everybody who would listen. So Mark, you were right. It was Italy. Stefano, I've really enjoyed talking to you today. I have learned loads of things. It's been really interesting. I appreciate your time and I'm glad you agreed to come back later on in the year. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.